Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Elbow Wellness Valley Talks, in association with World Wellness Weekend. My name is Hilton Lipkin. I am the General Manager of Elbow Wellness Valley. You can see some of it behind me. And today we have a very special guest coming to us all the way from Taiwan, Al, who is sitting next to me over here. Thank you very well. Actually, he's not sitting next to me here. I'm in Vietnam and he is in Taiwan, but it looks like we're sitting next to each other. So thank you very much for joining us today, Al. It's great to have you on our wellness talks. And for the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to try and find out a little bit more about you, about your philosophy on wellness, and some of your experiences in life that you can share with us, and your views on wellness. So maybe if you could please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Al, and I've been living in Taiwan for 5 years now, living in Asia for about 9 years. I lived in the Philippines, in India, Malaysia. Before that, I was living in Canada for about 36 years.
Wow.
And now, before I moved to Canada, I was living in France for about 21 years. So I'm 67 now.
67?
Yes.
Really?
But I didn't get sick for 22 years.
Wow. Okay, we are talking to the right person.
Yeah. So I used to be very, very sick before, especially when I was a child. When I was a child, I used to get ear infections, nose and throat and lungs problems, eyes problems, because I was living in one of the most polluted cities in France. It was Lyon. And Lyon in the 50s, you can imagine it's a place where everybody was heating their house with coal, which is extremely polluting. And it's a valley of two rivers getting together. So in the winter, we had a fog, but it was so thick you couldn't see across the street. And it was kind of this yellow, poisonous fog. I remember getting outside in the winter and breathing was painful. It was hurting my lungs to breathe.
Wow.
I guess if it was calculated on today's air quality index, they will say to people, stay home, don't get out. That's how I was in my childhood. And of course, the cars were very polluting. So there was very, very dangerous atmosphere to breathe in there. And on top of that, my father was a smoker. And he smoked inside a closed house in the winter with no ventilation. So I was pretty bad. So I missed a lot of school. And I thought that being sick was just part of life. And I was spending like most of the winter in bed with sore throat, sore ears, sore head. And it's only when I moved, when I was about 12 years old, I guess, we moved to south of France, to a place called Bandol between Marseille and Toulon.
Right, I know it well.
Heaven. It's a bit like California. It's like heaven, palm trees, olive trees, orange trees, nice warm winter, not polluted. So it made a big difference. And I started to do a lot of activities like playing tennis, swimming. So that was my teenage years. That was really beautiful.
Wow.
So, and then
yeah, please continue.
And I was still getting sick once in a while, but it was not as often. But until about 22 years ago, I was still getting sick in Canada when I was like getting colds and flus and things like that. And it's only like about 22 years ago that I started to really listen to my body. And that made a big change. And I also took some classes on wellness and workshops on different healing modalities. And I really understand that our health is really our responsibility. It's a reflection of what we choose and what we choose to do with our body and our mind. So how we react to something, is very important. Like if you are tired and you say, okay, I need a coffee, you are working against your body. If your body is tired, it wants to have a rest.
Yes, correct.
And something that made a big difference in my life was to learn Kundalini yoga and all the breathing methods of pranayama.
Wow.
Because when you learn how to breathe, you actually control your health a lot.
Okay.
You can't check, I mean, you can't say to your liver or your heart to stop and go, but you can say that to your breath. So when you are in control of your breath, you actually control the internal organs and the endocrine system and the blood pressure. So I teach people to use the breath to change their health, and it's really, really important.
Before you carry on, okay, we understand the story of your ill health really forcing you to look for other alternatives because you just had enough. But how did you come to discover these techniques? Was there something that happened? Did you go somewhere? Did you meet somebody?
I think one of the first course that I was taking, which was like alternative healing, was a sound healing training with the College of Sound Therapy in England. And I found that sound therapy was actually very useful, mostly by using the voice to tune our own body. So there's a set of 7 sounds that I was doing. Like when I was in Canada, I was doing it every morning outside, whether it was snowing, raining, sunny. I would go at dawn, about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and spend an hour doing meditation and a sound healing meditation, which is mostly taking a specific sound for each chakra and doing this sound until you feel this chakra is in tune. So it's almost like tuning your body with sounds. And this feels so good. And I taught this method to thousands of people.
Okay, so you discovered this, and you obviously realized that it was a game changer and was helping you. And now you've gone ahead and you educate people with this as well.
That's right, yes. And it's a very, very powerful practice. It's very simple, and it makes you realize that with your sound, you can actually get in touch with the internal parts of your body. And what we call the chakra system really is the endocrine system. So our endocrine system is extremely important for our health. And it's actually regulated partially by our breath. Because if your breath is shallow, which happens to a lot of people who have anxiety, fear, or are in an emotional state which is unhealthy, these people will have a shallow breath. So shallow breath will deprive the body from oxygen.
Right, of course.
And then one part of your body will suffer more than others. Like usually your brain is the one that needs the most oxygen, so it will always be sort of saved. But maybe your throat, your heart, your liver. And we know that the emotions will affect the organs, like the anger will affect your liver, the fear will affect your kidneys, fear of speaking up or telling the truth will affect your thyroid glands. So we know there's a relationship between emotions and health, but also the emotions will create a change in the breath. Shallow breathing is dangerous.
Shallow breathing.
It's very dangerous. I had some people, actually some of my clients were very sick. And one of them in particular was a young lady who had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which is it's a very scary disease because you become crippled slowly. And I found out that the only problem she had was shallow breathing. And when we started to work with the breath and give her some chanting exercise, within 2 weeks she was totally normal. She had no MS. But
just for our listeners, how would you define shallow breathing versus deep breathing? Or maybe you can show us.
When you watch a scary movie, you hold your breath, and then when the scary part is over, you go, it's like. But some people, they are sort of holding their breath all the time because they have an unhealthy maybe relationship. They are scared of their financial situation. They feel guilt. They feel shame. Whatever happens, the breathing gets shallow. And if it's shallow for like 10 minutes, it's okay. But if it's shallow day and night for days, and maybe months, but sometimes, it's actually going to affect your health in a very dangerous way.
So would you say from what you're telling me there, so if your mind state is not balanced, like if you're stressed or something like that, you tend to change your breathing pattern. So that's probably the origin. Okay. Interesting.
Yes, so when you are conscious of that, Then you do breathing exercise to reestablish the pattern. But also I teach people and I help my patients with emotions reprogramming. And emotions reprogramming is a way to let go of the programming and patterns that happen into your right brain and into your body from all the previous events in your life since you were born.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
this people can free themselves of programming and patterns was like induced to them against their will, more or less, because it's happening a lot in childhood and sometimes in adulthood too. But when we are a child, we are actually like a sponge for emotions and programming.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Wow. So, wow. So actually, I just asked you to introduce yourself and we've already learned so much. Wow. So just going back to recap. So you started off in a situation in a very polluted environment.
That's
And,
right.
and I think that that's a very important point because so many people live in cities around the world. And exactly like you said, you made a very, very important statement. You said that that's just how it was. You thought it was normal. And actually, by moving to the south of France and finding yourself next to the sea and with the beautiful nature, it was a completely different environment for you. So I think that's a super important lesson. I think people, yes, they do know that living in the city there's pollution, but I don't think people understand how bad it actually is. You know, the running noses, the crying eyes, the dry throats all the time. But it's terrible. And you lived in India, so did I. It's even worse. Yes, Lyon is very bad for a European city. But there are other cities around the world that are incredibly bad, and it's like people are completely polluting themselves. But it's quite ironic that coming from an environment where the breathing was actually making you ill, you've developed a skill into breathing that's making you well. So
That's right.
that's quite ironic. Yes, it's very interesting.
I understand the value of breathing and good air. Yes.
So if I just may ask before we go back into more, because it's fascinating what you're telling us. So how does a young man from Lyon, or I saw you did your education in Marseille, land up in Taiwan?
Okay, so first I was living in France until I was 21, and every summer I used to go to England, in London, to help my uncle. He had an antique shop in London, so I would go and help him every summer for 5 summers. And the last summer I went, I was about, I think, 19. And it's where I met my wife, who was actually from Canada.
Uh-huh.
We met in England, and she was going to go back to Canada, and I was going to go back to France to do my studies. And within 1 week, she changed her mind and she said, "I'm coming with you." So we lived in France together, and we went to the École des Beaux-Arts in France,
Wow.
which is a famous art school in Marseille. And we studied for 1 year. And then she went back to Canada, and I stayed in France. And then she asked me if I wanted to get married. I said, "Sure, it's a good idea." So the next spring we are married. So I got married in 1976.
Wow.
And so I was only 21. And I was married for 30 years. And then my wife had cancer in the last 5 years of our marriage, and she believed the doctors. She really believed that. Now they say, if you just cut this off, it will go away. And then it came back somewhere else. It came back in a colon. They say, "Oh, we cut it off, it will go away." So they cut that off too. And then it went back into a liver. And they say, "We can't cut that off because you'll die. So we give you chemotherapy, it didn't work. They give you radiation, it didn't work." So she blindly believed the doctor, but it's not the cancer that killed her, it's actually the treatment. So that's why I've been very keen on helping people with cancer in the last 15 years. My wife died 16 years ago. So in the last 15 years, I've been learning a lot about cancer. And to me, I understood that cancer is actually a symptom, it's not a disease itself.
Okay.
Cancer is a symptom of imbalance in the body. So if you try to find the cause of the imbalance, then you can reestablish normal function in the body. And I had several patients who were in stage 4 cancer, stage 3 cancer, almost dying, and they totally recovered.
Really?
Because we found the cause, and then we reprogrammed the cause, and I give them breathing exercises and some direction in their life, so that they don't get stressed. But it's amazing how fast people can recover. I'm amazed sometimes. Just a week, somebody can actually be free of cancer.
It's very interesting you should mention that. I was on a call last night, and one of the people on the call is actually works for an international cancer awareness association. And she was telling us that in Europe, I won't mention the country so we don't want to get into trouble, that the medical institute of that country will not allow any alternative medical solutions for cancer patients. They will only go with exactly what you just told me. Cut, chemo, chemo.
Because it's a huge industry.
Very sad.
It's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Very
cancer.
sad.
And there's even, it's such a money-making industry that the doctors who prescribe chemo in the US get over 1,000 US per prescription. So of course
What
they
a
get
sad world.
And there's one doctor who had actually a couple of clinics in the US, and he was diagnosing people with cancer that didn't have cancer. And finally, they got him. He's in jail now. But you imagine.
So just yeah, I mean, we can talk for an hour on that, and it's very sad and it's disgusting. And I don't think you and I will change that today. But the idea is to bring awareness to this. So
that's exactly true, yeah.
As somebody who's lived this, unfortunately for you, and you've really gone into it, if somebody discovers that they have cancer, and yes, obviously they're going to go to a hospital, they're going to have the scans, and they're going to do all the medical, what we consider new age medical treatments, what would you, as somebody who's really lived this and done extensive research, what would you tell them?
I will tell them, do you know why you have cancer? Do you know what's the cause of your cancer? And then if they say, I don't know, I will, if they are present with me, like they are physically present, I will do a very short energy test to see which part of their body is in balance. And let's say, for example, I find their throat is in balance, okay? So I will ask questions and say, are you afraid to tell your truth to somebody? Do you have a secret you never told someone? And sure enough, the question will point right to the cause, usually. I mean, it's so obvious sometimes that people are holding pain in their side of their body because something happened before, and it's because of fear, because of anger, because of shame, because of guilt, I had so many people who told me something during a session that they never told anyone else, and they kept the secret all their life. I give you a short example. There was a young woman, she was about 30, and she had trouble with relationships. And when we did a test, she had this imbalance and also a heart chakra imbalance. So I said to her, do you have a secret you never told anyone? She said, yes, I do. She said, do you want to share it with me? I said, yes, I will share it with you. She was being sexually abused between the age of 7 and 11 by a stepfather. And a stepfather said, if you tell anyone, I will kill your mother.
That's always the case, isn't it?
So I mean, the blackmailing plus the abuse together, I mean, it's awful for a child, but she was carrying this secret ever since, She was never able to speak it up. For the first time she could speak it up. Wow. So of course she had a problem with her throat, There was nothing wrong with her throat. There was something wrong with the emotion that she received from this abuse. And so many cases similar to this, it's scary, but happen to children when they are being raised and abused or sometimes violently treated.
So what would you say to people? Just go outside, scream, go and hug a tree, let yourself go.
What we do
Come
is
back to reality.
And we reprogram, we do the reprogrammation. So my method is, I learned this from a psychiatrist in Canada called Dr. Benner. and we reprogram the emotion. So we acknowledge the emotion and the memory and what emotions are associated with this memory. And then we reprogram the emotion with what's called an alternative body tapping, so that the reprogramming goes to both sides of the brain.
Oh, okay.
And this way you can get, I mean, it's not that you erase it, but you separate the emotion from the memory. So it's like having a file in a computer. You know? You can have a file, but there's two things. So you put one thing in one file, one thing in another file.
You know, since I was involved in physiology or in wellness, there's always one thing that's come about, and this is going back to the 80s, and the mind is very powerful, and the mind can, you know, really change things. And exactly what you're telling us here right now is it's coming from the mind, and the mind is controlling the body, and the mind is creating such a toxic environment that it's actually detrimental to your function. And it's very true. And I know I'm generally a happy person, and it's very difficult for me to relate to someone who's completely depressed or closed in or has a secret, like you said. But I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but if people are listening to this, and you know what you're telling them is, you have to find a soulmate. You have to find someone who you can speak to. You've got to be able to express yourself. Otherwise, it's just completely toxic.
Yes, that's right.
It's difficult. But anyway, I don't want to harp on such a negative, even though it's a reality, and it's very important for people who obviously suffer from these ailments. But if I may ask you a little bit, how do you see the wellness industry today? Where do you think things are going? Are you happy with the situation? Do you think that the medical people are still making too much money and it's not about being holistic? Or what are your views?
Well, I think that the big problem that the Western medical world tend to treat symptoms rather than causes.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's so obvious that if you go to the doctor and you say I have a headache, he will give you a pill for headaches. And then if you say that the pill for headaches give you a stomachache, he will give you a pill for stomach aches and so on.
Correct.
I've seen
And
patients.
on it goes, and on it goes, and on it goes.
I've seen patients with like 12 pills. No,
oh, yes, don't even go there. But let me stop you right there. Okay, so I have a headache. I don't want to take a pill. Mr.
Okay,
L,
so
what can I do?
Okay, so try to find the cause of your headache. Is it a situation that's like a permanent situation, like for example, some people say I have a headache every morning when I get up.
Right, that was going to be my example.
So I will say, well, do you sleep enough? Do you use an alarm? Now, if you use an alarm, you are going against your body. Never use an alarm to wake up, never.
But then I'll miss the bus.
No, you won't miss the bus because your body has the intelligence to wake up when you need to.
This is true.
Now, even if I take an airplane at 6 in the morning, I'm not going to use an alarm. What I do is that I know that my sleep cycles are 1.5 hours average. And if I need 3 sleep cycles, that's 4.5 hours. It's the minimum sleep I usually get. Sometimes I get 4 cycles, so it's 6 hours. I will try to go to sleep and wake up at the end of a cycle. So let's say, for example, I have to get up at 5 in the morning and it's midnight. So if it's midnight, I shouldn't get to sleep before 12:30, or I should get up at 4:30 if I will fall asleep right away. See, because then I get 3 full cycles. And this is so important because an alarm that disturbs you in the middle of a sleep cycle is worse than if you didn't sleep at all.
Oh yes, there's nothing worse than being woken up by alarm when you're in what we call a deep sleep. That's exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. To me, it's torture. And I know I will be, if it ever happened to me that there's noise or something wakes me up early in the morning and I'm in the middle of a big sleep, I will not feel well the whole day.
Yeah.
And then of course, if you do that every morning, you're going to work, you know. So people go to work, you know, they have been woken up by an alarm. They come back home, they are tired still. They eat too much, and then they watch TV, they fall asleep in front of TV. And then the alarm wakes them up when they, it's a vicious cycle.
Exactly. You just mentioned something there, food. Maybe we can touch a little bit on your views and your experience or suggestions in terms of nutrition.
Okay, so personally, I'm a vegetarian, although I eat cheese and eggs. But the food is very important for your health too. I was working in the Philippines in a center for raw food, detox, meditation, and yoga. And I was teaching people how to eat properly because most people eat too fast. So when you eat, you really have to chew everything. So the idea is to take one forkful or one spoonful, put your fork down, don't look at the food, just enjoy the food that's in your mouth.
Please tell us, why is it not good to eat fast?
Well, the digestion starts in your mouth, and the enzymes that are needed for your digestion start from your mouth. So if you don't have enough of this enzyme, the stomach has to work harder, and it won't have this enzyme anyway. So the food is not going to be digested properly. So you might eat more, but get less energy from it. So it's so important to eat slowly, and also to change your diet as you age. Like I probably eat half of what I ate when I was a teenager.
Right.
When I was a teenager, I could eat like lots of food, but now I usually eat like 1 or 2 meals a day, and I'm perfectly fine. I know if I eat too much, I will gain weight because the age, the body is not responding to the food the same way. I don't exercise really as much as I was doing tennis competition when I was a teenager. So it's very important to adjust your body intake with your age.
100%. Can I ask you a little bit your views on intermittent fasting, not eating at night, reducing? You mentioned a little bit there about reducing your intake with age, which is not always the case, but do you have any views on that?
Fasting is very good. I do it myself usually for 36 hours to 3 days maximum. It gives the body a chance to rest and reset.
When you say fasting, juicing?
Water.
Wow, only water.
Water and tea for 36 hours is excellent. And if you feel like you need a little bit of nutrients, you can add some lemon juice with maple syrup and cayenne pepper, which will give you vitamin C and some minerals that are enough to sustain you. But actually, people are afraid of fasting because we are so used to it every day.
Correct.
But I question the fact of eating actually breakfast, lunch, dinner, because it's become a habit. It's not eating because you're hungry. To me, I only eat when I'm hungry. If I feel hunger, I want to eat something, I will eat something. And sometimes I don't eat until like 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm fine.
Many years ago, I attended a lecture on physiology, and the lecturer, he put a big picture of a cow on the board, and he said, this is your physiology, this is who you should be looking up to, and this is who you should be following. And we were all sitting there like, what? And he goes, okay, this so unintelligent animal eats when it's hungry. It doesn't eat when it sees food. This animal grows in strength according to what it needs and never abuses. And it's healthy, and it can live for a very long time if humans don't get in the way. And it was an eye-opener for me, because at that young age, I realized that we eat with our eyes, and everything that we eat is over beautified to make it look good, to attract us, to make us eat more. And again, like you said, it's a vicious circle. And we told to eat bigger hamburgers. We're told to eat bigger this, better that, because it's nicer and it's more. And it's a mind game, because it's not the reality. It's not what we need.
Right. It's too bad that they sell so much junk food everywhere.
Correct. So much processed food.
And people say that if you don't eat any meat or fish, you don't get proteins. And I tell them, you know what? The biggest animals like elephants and cows, they don't eat any meat. They just eat grass.
That was the same example in that lecture, that they're vegetarians.
I'm growing my own grass not to make juice. Wheatgrass is excellent food. And you don't need a lot of space to grow your own grass. On a little tray, you can grow enough grass now.
Wow.
It makes a really, really beautiful juice. But same thing when you drink juice or milkshake, I mean, any kind of shakes, you should drink it very slowly.
Again.
Because although it's already ready to eat, but you still need the enzymes. So you should take a little sip, keep in your mouth to mix it with the enzymes, and then swallow it. So if you have like a full glass of juice, you should take at least 15, 20 minutes to drink it.
Wow. I don't think there are many people around that do that.
Yeah, they just tend to gulp it because it tastes good.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
then if you do it too fast, you get bloated, so your stomach feels bloated.
Correct.
With raw food should really be eaten slowly, and also only in places where it's warm. And you can't have a raw food diet in the middle of the winter if you live in New York. It'll be silly, you know.
Correct, correct. Yeah, I think, just asking you small questions, you really expand on them, and we really realize that we just governed and ruled by what goes on around us, and it's time to make changes if we want to be healthy, and we want to live a healthier and happier lifestyle. We have to make these changes, and we're seeing it all over the show, and there are certain things that are becoming mainstream, but you've definitely enforced some elements that we don't think about, and it's very important.
And sweating is very good too.
Of course, of course.
Sweating is cleaning your skin. So I have a little portable sauna in my place. I really enjoy that. And then I think most spa places now have saunas and steam rooms. It's excellent.
Correct.
And being
Wow.
contact with nature, that's important too.
I'm sure we can go on for hours, and you can keep giving us tips on being healthy. That will have to be our next talk, or maybe when finally you can come to do some activities at Alba Wellness Valley, then we can definitely, that's something we need to look towards, which we spoke about last time. But again, if I can recap a little bit for everybody, some of the things that we've spoken about. So pollution is a terrible, what's the word I'm looking for? Problem. And it's something that you experienced and at a young age. And I think people need to also wake up to that. Not that I want to advertise and tell everybody they should come to this and have fresh air, but there is actually a lot of fresh air here as well. But that is definitely something people should consider. And it's quite strange. The other day, somebody said to me, I never used to wear the mask on my motorbike because I just felt that it was ridiculous. But now that people have been forced to wear masks all the time, and they're on their motorbikes, and they realize that it's actually filtering out so much of the pollution around them, on a motorbike especially, it's a no-brainer, and we should be doing that. And every day we sit on our motorbikes in traffic and we wait for the light to change. It's like you back in Lyon. And it's actually very, very bad. And it's a small thing, but it can cause terrible ailments and illnesses. So it's a very important element that you mentioned way back in the beginning. But I think people need to understand that fresh air and breathing deeply and not shallowly, like you mentioned, all of these things can really help what we in the medical world, or what we are taught in the medical world, are called chronic diseases. And you've really brought to light for us, it's more of a mental well-being than just a chronic illness that there's nothing you can do about it. So that's fascinating, and I think it's definitely food for thought for everybody. And obviously then we've touched on nutrition, which is a hot topic around the world, and we do eat too much. We do get sold on big beautiful portions, and we put on weight, and we eat processed food, and we eat too fast. I can't speak for everybody, but I definitely eat too fast. So these are important points, and I thank you very much for sharing your knowledge. If you maybe want to leave one super L recommendation for a better, healthier, well-being lifestyle, what would that be? Maybe very difficult.
Okay, so it's to be conscious of your own health. Like, listen to your body, take time to do some work for yourself, whether it's yoga, meditation, breathing exercise, because you're the one in charge of your body. And it's not because you have a headache, you should go to the doctor. If you have a headache, try to find out, why do I have a headache? If you have a stomachache, fine. Why do I have a stomachache? Because the pill is not going to solve the problem, it's going to cover up the symptom. And that's dangerous. I say it's like when people have a water coming down from their ceiling and they just put a bucket on the floor. And then they need 2 buckets and then 3 buckets because they never fix the roof.
Excellent example. Excellent example. I think that is something very pertinent. So on behalf of Alba Wellness Valley and World Wellness Weekend, we thank you very much, Al, for being with us today on this talk, for sharing your insight. I know I've learned something, a lot actually, and it makes me think and understand a lot more than just what we think we know. So again, thank you very much for your inspiring knowledge and experience. And like I mentioned, we hope to see you soon in Vietnam at Alba Wellness Valley, where we can share this with lots of other people. But this will definitely go online, and we will share this with as many people as we can. We will also share your contact details with people. So if anyone wants to contact you and ask you a little bit more, I'm sure they can. So thank you very, very much for your time, and wish you a fantastic day, a very healthy and happy weekend and year ahead. And thank you for being with us.
Thanks for inviting me. Same wishes to you.
Thank you very much.